Let me share my screen. I'm gonna start off with sharing my actual display. Because we need to download a new Blender version once again. Yeah, you'll see. Alright, that should do. Map, okay, confirm that you now see my browser. Oh yes. Alright. So there was an update in Blender 3.5 and it's all about VDM maps, vector displacement maps. They are incredible. And it basically means that we can create custom brushes, custom displacements for our sculpting, which makes stuff, for example, like making scales, textures for bark, which is what we're going to be using it for as well. It's going to make stuff like that very easy, and creating horns, for example. It's all going to be like a simple brush, and I'll show you how that's going to work. But to get that to work, we need a new version of Blender, because it is not implemented in the 3.5 core version. We need one that is actually a little bit more experimental, but I do think it has been included in the new build. So what we can do, if you are at blender.org and go to the download tab, we can scroll down and there's a Go Experimental section, and we can just go to download Blender Experimental. And then we're gonna download the Blender 3.5.1 release candidate. So that's basically a stable version, but that's gonna be released at 3.5.1. You can already download 3.6, I see, but we're gonna stick to this one because that's the most stable. So just download that one, update your Blender, and then you got your base version ready. And then we need one more thing, and that is, I can actually give you guys the link in the side chat real quick. This one for the download for Blender. And then we need a file for the vector displacement map. So you can already see how it works here. You can basically draw very intricate, very nice things directly in your sculpt mode, and it works amazing. So we need one thing here, and that is the baking setup. Alright, so just download that one, and we don't need that anymore now. Alright, so I'm going to go back to Blender, and I'm actually going to change my stream window real quick so we can get a higher res, I feel like. Give me a second to figure out how that works. There we go. Alright, so we got Blender now, and I'm in the new version. And the way to see if you have the correct version is to go to Sculpt mode and then go to the Tool tab on the top right there. And we can go to Texture, and we should now have this little checkbox in the Texture tab at the bottom that says Vector Displacement. And that is what we're going to be using. Alright, so I know we were working on Totoro, but I told you last time to get more details on the tree and to work with easier things in sculpting. We're gonna learn about vector displacements first, so we're gonna be using that for the actual tree and for more stuff probably as well. So this is what we're going to work with today, vector displacement. So how does it work? Well, it is quite easy. What it does is in object mode, and I will open the demo file for a second that comes with the Blender. Let's see, where is it? VDM brush test. Here we go. So this is the brush test. You can basically download this at the same link that we downloaded the vector displacement blend file from, and I'll post that in the chat as well. So that's where you get the file we just downloaded. And you can also download the brush test demo file there on the same page. Alright, and then we get this startup screen. So this is basically us using a VDR. So you can see the VDM checkbox is enabled, and we have a brush selected with a texture. So this is the vector displacement map texture. And if I now draw, you can see that we're actually creating a new shape based on that vector displacement map. And I can do this as often as I want and as weird as I want. So we can make tentacles, waves for water. So this is going to really up the game in Sculpting, because previously it was not possible in Blender, because displacement maps were only displacement maps, not vector displacement maps. And what that meant is that we can't make overhanging stuff. Alright, you can see here that this top part is above the bottom part of that same texture. And that is not possible with only black and white, not only possible with displacement maps, we need vectors for that. So that's now finally possible to create crazy stuff like this in vector displacements. So how do we create our own one? Because we don't want this shape for our tree trunk, obviously, even though it could be dope. So if you want to create a custom one, we're going to create a new file first. Okay, so just create a clean file. That's always nice to start off with. We're gonna delete this boy, and then we're gonna hit Shift A, Mesh, and we're gonna start off with a grid, because a grid is nice. We get a nice pattern that we can work with, and we can subdivide this very easily to get more geometry. And it's always the same size. That's also nice. Alright, so to start this off, we need a sculpt of what we're gonna be making. Alright, so how to do that? Well, we need more geometry first. So we're gonna go to the modifier properties, add modifier, and we're gonna use a multi-resolution for this. So not a subdivision surface, but a multi-res. Click on that. And a multi-resolution is what you use for baking most of the times. Okay, it works very nice because we can now subdivide this, and we're gonna hit simple. The difference is if we subdivide this regularly, we're gonna get these sharp corners. And if I subdivide this the simple way, we're gonna keep our sharp corners. Right, we're gonna keep that. So we're gonna subdivide this. I'm going to go about 6 times. That is not too much geometry yet. We can still work with it quite nicely. Alright, so the first thing is that we now get this geometry in sculpt mode as well, without even applying this. Which means that if I now sculpt here, for example, and I draw new stuff on top, I got quite a lot of geometry without actually messing up my geometry itself, right? So if I set this back to 1 or 0, you can see that we can still go back to our OG geometry pretty much. So that's very nice. And we're going to be using this more and more for actual baking of displacement maps, of normal maps, stuff like that. It's going to be very useful. Alright, for now, we're going to start sculpting some random stuff. And I'm using the mouse right now, so don't blame me for my sculpting skills. I will show you this with a random shape. Alright, I'm going to start with a snake hook for the fun. And I'm just going to drag this out a little bit. Don't go too big. We want these corners of the square to keep the same locations, which means that we can't do this, right? Because then it's going to fuck up the corners. So make sure to stay somewhere in the middle. Right there, we can drag this out. Make this crazy, weird shape. I'm not sure what this is. Maybe like a weird sea... What is it called? The seaweed stuff or some stuff. And we can just add details all we want. For example, some base texture here. Draw over that a few times so we get some nice rough textures. That's always looking nice. And you want this initial VDM texture to be as detailed and as final as you can make it pretty much. Because this is what we're gonna be scattering around later. Okay, so make sure, and if you have weird stuff like this, it is because we are going through the geometry. So just hold shift and draw over that to smoothen it out a little bit. There we go. And you can see that if I hold shift and middle mouse and move my screen, we get the initial geometry of our mesh. Right, so this is the non-subdivided mesh. And if I let go, we get the subdivided one. Okay. So just draw in the details that you need, the details that you want to see in your sculpt later on. And then just stop it where you feel like you have the good shape. I will stop it right now, because otherwise I'm going to spend a lot of time. I'm going to make sure that at least the bottom part right here is a little bit rounded, smoothened, so it isn't popping up out of nowhere. Alright, something like this. That's looking nice. Going all the way around, there we go. And then we can even add a little bit of a crease, for example, right here in the middle to create some kind of an, I don't know what we're making, but as long as it looks cool, it is fine. Okay, and this is not going to be used for the tree, I guess, because it's not really a tree shape. But we can make a new one anytime we desire and just save this texture, and we can always reuse this later. Right, so we get a nice little horn, I guess. So I'm just going to draw a little bit more geometry around the base there, just so we get a little bit of a thickness here. And this is just, well, go crazy with your sculpting. I'm doing this with a mouse, so you can do it too. We don't need any kind of fancy drawing tablets, displays. We can make this nice and textured. Right, it's fun because when we use the clay strips one, the one I'm using right now, and we overlap it a bunch of times, it will eventually look like a nice texture anyway. Alright, that's not bad at all. You can smoothen it out a little bit. So now we actually have something that appears to be coming out of a skin or out of the ground or a surface. Alright, so I'm going to save this now as a VDM, and I'll show you how that works. To do that, we need to append some files first. And append in Blender, of course, means that we're going to import resources from a different blend file. I'm going to smoothen this out a little bit more. There we go. So we can go to File, Append, and I don't think you can see the window that I'm at right now, but locate the file you just downloaded, the demo file with the baking. Alright, it is called, let me see, VDM Baking Setup. That's the file you download if you click on the second link. Click on that, append, look for the material folder, and then just select baking material, VDM baking material. Nothing happens, of course, because we still need to apply that material. The way to do that is to go to the material tab, and just select this little icon, and then just apply the VDM baking material. There we go. Very, very easy. Now, next step. How are we going to bake this? Well, we need to be in cycles. That is the one thing that is absolutely required here, is we need to go to cycles. So go to the render properties, and Eevee doesn't have an option to bake. Okay, so we are going to go to cycles, and we now have this bake tab at the bottom, which is what we need to make this into an actual texture, right? And then we're going to set the device to GPU, and I'm going to set the samples to 1. Alright, we don't need a lot of samples, we only need 1 to get the VDM map. So don't go out rendering this on 4,000 samples because you think it's going to look more detailed. It's not. Just keep this low. And then we need, let's see, we can go to the bake. And before we do that, we first need to add a little texture that we can bake it to. Okay, so every bake will need an image texture to save it in. So we first have to drag this window to the left a little bit, set that to the shader editor, and by default the material we appended just now, the VDM material, has a clean image texture for us. Alright, so we don't have to add that ourselves. We can just hit new, call this whatever you want. I'm going to call this something like a ground tentacle or some shit. Ground tentacle, that's fine. And we can make the width 512 and the height 512 as well. Alright, VDM textures don't need a lot of resolution. They really don't. Don't go over 512, it's not needed at all. You can go lower even. 512 seems to be the way to go. And the color doesn't matter, okay? So hit OK. And then let's just change this window to the, let's see, where is it? The image editor right there. And then we can hit the top there and select our ground tentacle material. So right now it's black, and that is because we haven't really, we haven't baked this yet, right? So we want to bake this, but we don't want the bake type to be combined. We want this to be an emit, but it's basically going to be like an emission, and a emitter shader basically means it's not going to be affected by the lighting in your scene. Right, it's going to be very strong colored, and that's what we need for the VDM as well, because vectors use color, and we want that to show nicely. And then the rest of this stuff should be all good to go. So now we can hit bake, if we have our object selected. Hit bake, And let's just see what happens. Give it a few seconds. There we go. So this is now our VDM map. Okay, so we just created our first VDM texture in Blender, which we can reuse anytime in the future. And it took us like, what, 10 minutes? Image. Remember, always save this. Image, save. And we need to save this as an open EXR. That's the only way it's gonna work as a VDM texture later on. Save it as an open EXR. And then name it something like, well, ground tentacle is fine, I guess. I'm gonna save this in my download folder. And just save it there. Alright, so now we have our ground tentacle as a VDM. My god, we can always reuse this. Now hit Shift A, mesh, and let's just try this out real quick. I'm gonna add a round cube. Click it open there and set the radius to 1. That just gives us a nice little starting point. Move it to the side a little bit. And then we can subdivide this. We can do a multi-res once again. Remember, a multi-res is nice if we want to sculpt in high resolution as well. And then just subdivide it. Let's see. We can see the geometry there in the bottom, how many vertices, how many faces we have. And I'm going to try to get this close to about 1 or 2 million. So subdivide this. You can see the verts counting up, subdivide. And we're now at 800,000. And 6 is the maximum subdivisions. It doesn't go any further, even if I hit subdivide. Oh, it goes further. Well, there we go. Didn't know that. And then we can just go to sculpt mode. Alright. And now, here comes the magic part. We want to go to the draw brush. And we want to go to the tool settings on the top right. The reason why is because we want to use this as a texture. So we want to edit the brush that we have currently to be a VDM brush. Right, that's the important part. Which means that we need to have a texture. So open up the texture tab, hit new, and then there's a little button on the right that says show texture in texture tab. If you click that, it's going to take us to the texture tab, so where we can actually select our texture. And then we can select our ground tentacle texture right there. And it's looking nice. And, well, it has all the colors we need to have the VDM map. Now, that is all we need to do in the texture tab. So let's go back to the tool. And let's change a few of those settings. Because right now it works. But it's just going to draw it on top, which is looking weird, pretty much, right? So what we want to do is set this mapping from tiled to area plane. And we want to enable vector displacement. That is very important, of course, because that's what we're doing. And then we want to go to the stroke. And we want to set this from space to end chord. That's probably not the right pronunciation, but we'll roll with it anyway. And that basically means that where we're going to brush now, it's going to be staying in its place as long as we hold the brush. Alright, so that means we're going to be able to drag it out. So I'm going to scale this up. And left click anywhere and just drag it out. And we get, well, not quite what we need. We have a tentacle, but we only have the base part. Alright, so that is dependent on your strength of your brush, but also on your bake a little bit. Alright, so I've had this before where lower level bakes work nicely and higher bakes work a little bit worse. So what we can do first, Ctrl Z and just try to up the strength a little bit. Now we already get a little bit more, but not quite there yet. So what I'm going to do instead is just try to bake this again. And maybe change the setting if we need to. So let's select that and go to our render properties. And let's just try... let's try active camera and bake that. And let's just find out what it does. Right, sometimes we need to play around a little bit. And we have to save this again. Let's see. Sometimes we need to update our texture as well, which means we just close it and then open it back up from where we downloaded, or sorry, where we saved it. It should be here somewhere, tentacle. There we go. And let's see how it looks, the image editor. I think it's still not right. So what I'm going to do is just set this back to above the surface. And then I'm just going to have my camera above the surface as well, just to make sure, because one of these options is active camera and one is above surface. So moving your camera on top of your object with active camera should actually do the trick as well. Right, that's basically what that means. And then we have to save the image. Remember to do that. And what I'm going to do is just test this out once again. Right? It is a new feature, so we need to do some testing sometimes. Alright, let's see. At the Tools tab, we have a texture. Does it work now? Yes, there it goes. So just rebaking it with a different setting works pretty nicely. So you can see that now by just dragging, I can sculpt with these shapes. Isn't that crazy? Right, and you can do that with anything you need. Crazy high stuff, low stuff. You can create procedural grass, or not procedural, but you can create stylized grass, for example. And now if I drag and swipe this out and just rotate my mouse, you will see that we actually rotate that texture as well. So you can actually play around with the rotation and stuff. You can play around with the size. We can create an incredibly big one there at the bottom if we need. And then we can even drag new geometry out of that as well. Right, so that is just a fun thing we can now do in Blender that wasn't possible before. Isn't that nice? Alright, so that's a very easy way to bake your own VDM maps. I recommend saving all of your VDM maps in the same place. And that means that the more you create, the more you will be able to use in the future as well. So if you ever need a tentacle that comes out of the ground, or you can see this as like a root sticking through a wall or something, that could actually work nicely. And then, well, this is something you could definitely use. Okay, so how can we use this for wood? And well, to do that, I'm first going to open my Totoro. Actually, let me save my VDM map, make sure it is saved. There we go. I'm going to open up the actual class file. Give me a second, because we have, of course, got a Totoro class going on as well. Let's go to that file real quick. Gotta go through 6 subfolders right here or something like that, so give me a second. And that should be it. There we go, we got Totoro. And where is my stick? We already sculpted this, I feel like. Did we not? Did it not save again? That will be incredibly bad. Let me try a few things. Ah, there we go. Whew. Lucky. Alright, so this is now our actual our branch, right? And we want to create some VDM maps that can help us with the tree, with the geometry a little bit, right? So for example, this part right here is something we can do with VDM maps because it's a reoccurring shape right here, and we could use that in the top of the tree somewhere, at the end as well. It's a shape that is reoccurring, and we can use that very nicely, okay? So let's try to create that, right? While we're at VDM maps, we might as well just make it easy. So I'm going to set my 3D cursor, is this little button right there below the select button. I'm just going to set that somewhere on my reference image. And I'm going to hit Shift A, Mesh. Remember, we need a grid. Where is it? Mesh. Grid. There it is. And then just move it out a little bit. And this is what's going to be our VDM map, right? So we are going to do the sculpting on here. So remember what I showed you last time. Go to the modifiers, add modifier, multi-resolution, and just subdivide this simple about 6 or 7 times. I'm going to go with 7 or 6. Let's go with 6. That should be fine for this geometry. It's not that high. So let's create a basic shape. Okay, so I'm thinking this shape is something that we can work with quite nicely. And I'm going to make this very quickly. Sculpt mode. First thing we want to do is drag out some geometry to one side. For example, to the left. Don't make it too big, remember. There we go. A little bit to the left. Something like that. That's looking quite decent. Alright, and then I'm just going to draw over that a few times with the clay strips. Alright, remember, I like some hard geometry. It's just nice. There we go. We can just draw over that. And that's already gonna look. Hold shift if you have that weird stuff going on. Remember, sometimes it just goes through each other. And that is just, I don't know, something that happens, I guess. We can just draw over that though and just hold shift and it will get better in the end. Okay, there we go. And we may actually just control Z this a few times and messed it up a little bit. Alright, I'm just going to downgrade the strength a little bit. I feel like the strength is messing it up. There we go. Alright, so we got some strength there. And let's just draw on top. Create some nice streaks and stuff. Hold shift, make it smooth. There we go. And add some nice looking geometry. Right? Because we want to have this come out of wood as well. So we want some hard lines there. Hard surfaces, because that is what wood is pretty much as well. There we go. Now this works best if you have a drawing tablet or something like that, of course. But the mouse works fine too. Okay, that's no big deal. Alright, and then I'm just gonna tweak this a little bit, draw something out there, draw something out there, just create details. Right? This is the part where we get to create details and go crazy with that as well. Because this VDM map will not actually affect our geometry that much, unless we let it happen. So we can create this as detailed as we want, and then we can use that in any geometry pretty much. Alright, so let's use, let's try a little crease there. I want to create a little bit of an indent on this side. So actually, let's create a draw brush and hold control and create a nice little hole, a nice little pocket there. That's looking decent. Alright, there. Beautiful. And I'm gonna make some edges a little bit harder with the pinch brush. For example, this top one, I want this to be nice and tight, nice and sharp. There we go. And this one as well. Make it nice and sharp. We went over these brushes before, so you should already know a little bit about how they work. Make it nice and, well, make it stylized if you want. Make it realistic if you want. This is where your own freedom comes into play even more. And we can add a little bit of an indent there. Remember, as long as these corners of your VDM map are squared in this little square, you can do whatever you want in between, which is quite fun. So we have a nice branch with a little hole there. And we can add a little hole on the other side as well, because I want to rotate this one a few times so we can work with this one more and more. There we go. Oh, I'm behind the plane. There we go. Maybe a little bit of an indent here as well. Why not, right? Nature is organic, so we can do whatever the hell we want to do. Beautiful. And let's just select that paintbrush, make some sharp things again. There we go. Amazing. I'm gonna select the clay strips for a little bit as well. And just make this a little bit more rough. I mean, wood is rough, so the clay strips are perfect for some wood applications. Try some hard stuff on here as well. Just go wild with it. There are no errors you can make right now. That's the fun part. This is looking fine. Alright, this is already looking a little bit like wood. Great textures. There we go. Alright, so we're not gonna add materials to this VDM except for the one we downloaded. Right? We're not gonna shade this one with actual wood because we want to use this only as a VDM brush, so we will do the shading later. Alright, gonna add some more geometry. Hold shift to avoid these crazy looking things there. Beautiful. Nice. Okay, there we go. I'll just keep it at that. I think that works fine for what we are going to be using this for anyway. Okay. Nice. Right, so let's go to object mode. This is just going to be our tree trunk pretty much, or at least a little bit of a sticking out point. So what I'm going to do is the same thing we did before. Alright, we're going to go to File, Append, look for your downloaded VDM baking setup.blend file, the second link I sent. Remember, go to the materials folder and just append that baking material. Then add that to your tree trunk. Right, select it and then just add it. Where is it? VD There we go. Baking nicely. Now just set your render properties real quick to a max samples of 1. There we go. And then we're gonna go to the materials. I'm gonna hit new on that image texture and name this like a tree trunk, I guess. Make it 512. Hit OK. Now go to the bake tab on the bottom and set that to emit. And then just bake your texture. Give it a few seconds to load up. Because this is a little bit of a larger file already, which may need a little bit more time to bake. Let's hope it does bake at some point. Hello? Can we bake this? Let's see what happens. VDM tree trunk. It's not baking yet. There's some kind of issue going on. I'm not sure why. If it works weird, just name your object, select it, and press F2. Name this like a tree trunk. Tree trunk. There we go. Then just save your file, create a new file. Give it a second. My computer is doing all sorts of things for some reason. Hopefully it's not crashing too much. Seems like it is. Can you still see my stream? Oh no. Alright. I am going to close Blender for a second. Not sure why that happened. Give me a sec to start that back up. Alright, I'm back. Here we are. My Blender is in a different resolution now, but that's fine. Alright, so yes, click on the stream again if it stopped for you. So we're now just going to append that object that we just created here in the big universe classes. The Totoro here. I just renamed this to the tentacles, right? The tree trunk. And I'm just gonna append that just so we have a clean file to bake in. I guess the all the hair systems, then the geometry nodes that I have saved in the other Totoro blend file, it gets a little bit too heavy for the computer to also deal with baking a very high resolution mesh. Alright, so I'm just going to start in a clean file. I'm going to delete that cube. The material should already be there, yes, because we appended it. I'm going to swipe this to the left. Go to the shader editor just to make sure that we still have our material. And then just go to image editor and set it there, the tree trunk. Alright, now let's just continue baking. Set your render cycles to cycles, your render engine to cycles. Set that to 1, alright, the samples to 1. Device GPU, go to the bake settings, and let's set that to the emit. There we go. And then just try to bake it in a separate file. There we go, it works here. So if that happens to you, we just found out to just open your object in a clean Blender file. Alright, then just save your VDM, sorry. Save it to tree trunk as an open EXR. Of course, save. Alright, now we can open our Totoro back up. There we go. I'm gonna delete this object because we don't need that anymore. I'm gonna select my tree trunk, and what I'm gonna do is just disable my moss for a second. And that should be done. Alright, now, how do we apply that here? Because this object doesn't have a lot of geometry. So what we're going to find out now is if VDMs can also work with die node topology. That will be amazing, and I think it will work. So what we're going to do is actually go to skill mode, and then select the draw brush, go to the tool settings on the top right, and let's first of all open up our texture, hit new, click on the button on the right, and then just select your texture here. It is called, what was it called? Tree trunk. I think we first need to open that up. Yeah, this is the wrong one, because I actually I baked it in a different file. So we just have to open that up to where you downloaded that. Mine is in my download folder. So just open that baked EXR file that you have now. There we go. And we can now set our, let's see. We can now set our other settings. We're now in the texture tab. We're gonna go back to the tool tab, so the top one, and just set all of our settings right. Set this from child to area plane. Vector displacement. Remember to check that box, otherwise it's not gonna work. Go to stroke. Set that back to N-chord. And now we're gonna enable dyno topology. Alright, we're gonna try to use that, and we need a little bit of geometry. So I'm gonna set the detail size to about 5 and just try that out first. Okay, so you can see that if we actually increase and decrease our brush size with F, we already have a little bit of an indication of what the size of our trunk thingy is gonna be. Alright, something like that. So I can now just try to draw that out. And, well, it works, but we don't have nearly enough geometry. I'm going to crank my strength up to 1 while we're at it as well. And let's just set it even smaller. Detail size to 2. And let's see what happens. That's better, but still not enough geometry. Maybe 1. I don't think it's actually working with a dyno topology just yet. Let's see if we get any additional resolution. No. Alright, so turns out it's not working with dyno topology just yet, which is, it may be something that comes at some point, but not right now. So what we're gonna do instead is just go to the clay strips, and I'm just gonna dyno topo it with this first, and then I'm gonna extrude it out. Alright, so all the parts where I want this to happen, where I want high geometry, I'm just gonna draw some very detailed geometry in that we can work with. Alright, that's just something I guess we need to do nowadays when we're working with a non-uniform mesh, right? Because this part has a very low geometry and this part is higher. So it's too bad that the dyno topology doesn't work with that yet, but we can work around it, doesn't matter. Something like this, right? So now we have a nice high density mesh right there. Beautiful. Let's try that VDM again. Alright, so now we actually get our tree trunk. And it's looking already way better. Now for some reason it is still, we have to rebake that. Same as last time, we don't get the top part of it, which is a shame. I'm not sure why that happens, but you will have to rebake that next time yourself. But you can already see how this is going to make your life way easier. By just making some very nice VDM maps that actually stick out of your wood, right? So I can just draw all of these out, and now you can just sculpt on this still all you want. So you can smoothen all of this out, drag this out more, and just create some very hard looking cut off tree branch. Well, that's what it looks right now. I'm not even mad about how it turned out. It just looks like some trees got cut off there, which is also fine. And we can add some more here. I guess there's not enough geometry there. So remember, this is going to be as detailed as your object's geometry. Right, so just draw over your stuff with some clay, with dyno topo enabled, and have some nice detail in there as well. For example, if you want a big one sticking out there, I'm just going to draw some high res geometry over there. Just like that. And then I'm going to go back there, and I'm going to draw a nice big cut off tree trunk in that place there. For example, like that. Now I can just hold shift and smoothen this out a little bit if I feel like it. Okay, that's already better. Nice, so now we have a nice cut off tree trunk there that incorporates some of the details from our VDM map. Not everything, because our geometry is quite odd, right? So we will have to add some stronger geometry on these places to really get the results there. Alright, so you can rebake this yourself to actually get all the details. I'm not sure why that happens actually. Maybe it's a little bit too new to actually use that stuff. but this is fine as well. All right, it doesn't really look like the drink we made yet, which is, well, it's annoying. So once you really play around with this, all right, once you really play around with your VDM brushes, let's see if this is actually the saved VDM brush. Nope. All right, so once you actually try this out, make sure that once you save your brush, you always test first on, for example, let's see, a round cube that you set to 1 of a radius. Make sure to just test it out on that first, right? So just set some high subdivisions. Sorry, set a multi-resolution and subdivide that about 6 times. And then just to go to the sculpt mode and just test out your VDM map that you created, so you know right away if it works or it doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, you can just rebake it in the way that I showed you. That's gonna save you some time then, I guess. Okay, so how long have we been going at this? Quite some time. Alright, I will just cut it off here, and maybe I can figure out why the baking doesn't work 100% of the time, but it just may be something that happens. I mean, it isn't incorporated in the official Blender yet for a reason, so I guess that will be it will be better in the future anyway. All right, but at least you know how to create some nice looking custom textures that you can use to sculpt. All right, so that has been it for today. Are there any questions about this? Nothing at all then?
Nope.
All right. Well, then now you know a little bit about VDM, and that is the newest of the newest in Blender. So if you try to get into this, if you try to incorporate this into your workflow with sculpting, with well, for example, creating skills and stuff on dragons, that's just gonna be so amazing. I want to show you that real quick. All right, just let me show you this. I'm gonna add a little grid. I'm gonna show you the power of this tool, and we're gonna subdivide this. All right, there, 7 times. And then I'm gonna sculpt this. I'm gonna sculpt a nice looking dragon skill. Alright, now how do dragon skills work? I don't know 100%, but I'm gonna start off with a mask. A mask, there we go. I can now draw in a mask here, and I'm gonna draw this in. Let's just draw this in the shape of an actual skill, I guess. A skill, let's set up the strength a little bit. There we go. I'm gonna try to get a random looking skill set up here. Something like that. I don't know what dragon skills look like. Please don't judge me. But get the skill pattern. Right, use that mask tool. That's incredibly powerful for stuff like this that actually requires some kind of a split. Right, you can see the lines in between are actually some split lines. I want one here. There we go. Remember not to go out of bounds. Some very quick skills for you guys. Very quick. There we go. One more, perhaps, or 2. And this is a very soft brush as well. That doesn't help with making hard surfaces. But I'm doing this to show it off. So I think it will help anyway. One more here, perhaps a little small scale. There we go. Now, we can actually hit Ctrl-I to invert that mask. And now if you select the clay strips and just draw on that, we should only get those skills to pop out. Alright, you can see it happening already. So we get these skills to pop out nicely. The rest will stay in. Everything we masked out will stay in nicely. So we actually get some thick skills here. Alright, that's looking quite decent. Nice looking skills there. Beautiful. Alright, well, those were some quick skills. They actually look better than I expected. Not bad at all. Alright, so what we can do to bake this once again, and I'll do it very, very quickly. Alright, I'm going to go to File, actually. Yeah, go to File, Append, and just append that same material from the blend file that you downloaded, right? The VDM bake file. append that material, and I just apply that to that VDM map, VDM baking material. Drag this window to the left, select shader editor, hit new on that image texture, and let's name this scales. Set it to 512 and 512. Hit OK. There we go. And hit your render engine to cycles and GPU with a sample of 1, I guess, works. Actually, let's try 16 maybe. I'm not sure. It was set on 16 by default in the blend file, so maybe it helps. And then we can go to the bake, and we can go to emit, and just hit bake. Alright, give it a second. Go to your image editor, select your scales, see how it looks. It looks like it worked at least. Now, save that as your EXR. Scales. I'm going to save this as an open EXR. Save image. Now let's select our little sphere, our testing sphere, that has some nice resolution. And let's go to sculpt mode. Go to the draw brush. Go to the tool settings. Go to the texture. Hit new. Go to the texture panel. And then just open up your EXR. Alright, scales. There we go. This is our scales now. Let's go to the tool settings of our brush. Set that to area plane. Set that to... what was it again? Anchored. There we go. And we want the fall off to be... That may be the issue at the tree as well. We want the fall off to be constant. That's something I forgot to tell you guys. You want to set this at constant. Alright. There we go. And that should already be it. So we can now... Oh, my audio just went out. Give me a sec. There we go. Let's see. Feels like I'm forgetting something. Not sure. I can try to draw on here. Why is it not working? It is very soft. I set my strength to 0.2. That's why. Alright, so now I can now just draw and add my scales on there, and it seems to be inverse, so I'm gonna hit Control and just draw it, and we're gonna add some scales on there. Alright, and they're gonna be added quite alright. They're not that strong, so we could actually try to rebake that again to get rid of the issue that we had previously. I don't know why that keeps happening. I'll dive deeper into that. Okay. So let's see. We can try to bake this very quickly again. At the bake settings, set your camera to above the surface, and just bake that. Bake that again, and save your image very nicely. All right, then just go back to sculpt mode. Let's see if that did the trick. Not quite, but it's a little bit stronger. It feels like. But you can use this quite nicely already to draw over your mesh. I think I got a little bit too close to the edge here because we get some of these hard edges, you see. But this is just one way to already add a little bit of scales on your brush. We can also set this back to smooth perhaps, so that may just give us some less hard edges. There we go. And let's see. Yeah, now it's already getting a little bit smoother. And we can add some very subtle normal maps for scales, for example. Alright. Now the strength is not that great. So I would have to actually sculpt this a little bit higher than we see right now. But you can see the power of this, right? At some point, when you get the hang of this, it's going to be incredibly useful to sculpt very quick details in your mesh that you can just reuse in the future as well. Alright, I got a few things to find out, especially why it's getting cut off sometimes, but I'll get back to you guys with that as well. Alright, so, well, that is it. I hope you can see the potential of this tool, at least. And, yeah, we'll be using that for the tree as well. Alright, any questions based on that?
No, but thank you. It's quite impressive, and actually looking forward to see what others doing with it. As it's already impressive, even when it's like the fraction scale looks a bit different. It reminds me of the back of a tortoise. However,
Yeah.
I think it's already very useful. Yeah, as I mean, you can simply like when you want to do like the back of a tortoise, you would also need that. Yeah, as you have still like some details that you want to make look or that the people can see it. Yeah, so it makes still craft how useful the tool is in the end.
Yes, sir. It's a very useful tool. It's a very how do you call it? Like a sensitive tool as well, because it depends on a lot of settings. It depends on your brush a lot as well. We have this set as subtract for some reason as well. That's not useful at all. Yeah, that's why it was inverted. So yeah, it is very sensitive for your brush settings. But you can now see that it's already looking a little bit better, right? So creating these skills is a bit better. So that's nice. And we can even set the strength to 2. Alright, we don't have to stick to 1 for the strength. We can always set this at 3, and that's just going to create that very thick looking skills that we created just now. Alright, so that is, well, that's looking better, I feel like. That shows the better potential of this tool. Create very large scales, stuff like that. It's very, very useful. Alright, if you want this to be smoother... damn it, I'm continuing this for too long. If you want a smoother overlap between those skills, make sure you don't get as close to the edge as I did with this. Just create 1 or 2 or 3 skills. And then it's probably going to look a little bit better. But this is quite a nice brush actually to get some starting textures in. Not bad at all. I created this quite quickly. You can probably see the potential of this. I hope. Alright, that has been it. We get a nice rough surface now. Okay, then remember guys, tomorrow we're gonna have a little party. Right? We have our 1 year existence of the Baked universe. Which means we've got a nice space coming up. We'll be partying. I got rid of all plans I had, and the party is all that's gonna happen for me. So I'm gonna drink IPAs. We're gonna celebrate stuff. We're gonna be giving away NFTs. I gotta give away maybe 1 or 2 of my one-on-ones as well, some foundation NFTs. So that's gonna be a lot of fun as well.
Yes, can I take part at that? Like, come on, I just giveaway can take part or not? Come on.
Yeah, I think everyone can take part. It's my giveaway. It's not from the official Big Universe, I guess. So everyone can come in and join that.
Thank you.
Alright then. I'll see you all tomorrow.
Yes, sir. Have a good night.
Bye bye.